Teddy Nightmare.
Greetings and welcome to Teddy's Nightmares, your chilling destination where the holiday cheer turns to spine-tingling fear. I'm your host, ready to guide you through a series of terrifying Christmas tales that will make you rethink the safety of your cozy holiday gatherings. Tonight, we delve into stories that transform the most wonderful time of the year into a haunting ordeal. From the unsettling presence of an uninvited guest to the mysterious figure lurking in the shadows of a family home, each narrative unwraps the darker side of the festive season. So, grab your hot cocoa, snuggle up by the fire, if you dare, and prepare to explore the eerie side of Christmas. But first, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications, ensuring you never miss a moment of terror here on Teddy's Nightmares. Story 1. The Christmas Intruder, a Nightmare Before Christmas. As the festive season approached that year, our small town, usually a hive of holiday activity, seemed to carry an unusual quietness, a calm before a storm I never saw coming. The night of December 24th was especially serene, with gentle snowflakes adorning the town like a scene from a Christmas card. I had spent the evening at a friend's holiday party, basking in the warmth of good company and seasonal cheer. Walking home, the streets were aglow with festive lights, casting a magical glow on the snow-laden paths. My house, a quaint two-story at the edge of town, appeared welcoming with its twinkling Christmas lights. However, as I approached, a sense of unease took over. The front door was slightly ajar, an unusual sight that instantly filled me with apprehension. With a racing heart, I pushed the door open, half expecting to find my roommate, Clara, playing some sort of prank. But the scene that greeted me was far from humorous. The living room was in complete disarray, with furniture overturned and holiday decorations strewn about haphazardly. A sense of violation washed over me, and then I saw it, a trail of blood leading ominously towards the kitchen. My mind raced with terrifying possibilities. Where was Clara? Was she hurt? Or worse? I moved cautiously towards the kitchen, my every step filled with dread. The once familiar space was now a scene of chaos, evidence of a violent struggle painfully apparent. A cold fear gripped me as I contemplated the fate of my dear friend. It was then that I heard the heavy, unmistakable sound of footsteps coming from the floor above. My blood turned to ice. The intruder was still in the house. I had to hide. I had to think. The pantry, a small room off the kitchen, seemed like my only option. I quickly slipped inside, closing the door with trembling hands. From my hiding place, I heard the footsteps move with a slow, deliberate pace, each step echoing through the silent house. The intruder was searching for something or someone. I prayed they wouldn't find me, my heart pounding against my chest. Then, the unthinkable happened. The kitchen door creaked open, and through the narrow gap, I saw a figure, tall, imposing, and wearing a Santa Claus mask. It was a grotesque sight, the festive disguise now a symbol of terror. In one hand, the figure held a knife, its blade stained with blood. I shrank back into the shadows, trying to make myself as small as possible. The figure moved around the kitchen, opening cabinets and drawers. It was searching methodically, relentlessly. The situation felt surreal, a nightmare unfolding in my own home. Time seemed to stand still as I remained hidden. Eventually, the figure left the kitchen, the sound of its footsteps receding. After what felt like an eternity, I cautiously emerged from the pantry. The house was silent, the intruder seemingly gone. I knew I had to leave, to find help. Stepping outside, the cold winter air hit me like a wave, snapping me back to reality. I ran to my neighbor's house, pounding on their door with desperate pleas for help. The police arrived swiftly, their sirens shattering the night's silence. They entered the house, guns drawn, searching every corner. To my immense relief, they found Clara hidden in a closet upstairs. She was injured but alive. The intruder had believed her dead and left her there. The police speculated it was a burglary gone wrong, but nothing could explain the bizarre and terrifying behavior of the masked intruder. The aftermath was a blur of police questions, ambulance lights, and a deep sense of shock. Clara was taken to the hospital, her injuries serious but not life-threatening. I sat in the back of the ambulance, my mind reeling from the night's events. The image of the masked figure, the Santa Claus mask now a symbol of horror, was etched into my memory. In the days that followed, the town buzzed with the news of the Christmas Eve intrusion. Our home became a crime scene, the festive decorations now a backdrop to a tale of terror. Clara and I were interviewed by the police, our statements taken in an attempt to piece together the events of that night. Sleep became elusive in the weeks that followed. The once comforting walls of our home now felt oppressive, each creak and groan a reminder of that night. Clara, once vibrant and full of life, became withdrawn, the sparkle in her eyes dimmed by the trauma. The investigation yielded few answers. No suspects were identified, and the motive remained a mystery. The masked intruder had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of fear and unanswered questions. The festive season, a time of joy and celebration, was now marred by the memory of that night. Christmas lights, once symbols of happiness, now served as a grim reminder of the terror that had visited our home. The holiday spirit was overshadowed by a sense of loss, a loss of safety, of innocence. Our lives eventually moved on, but the scars remained. The Christmas intruder, as the incident came to be known, became a cautionary tale in our small town, a chilling reminder that even in the most festive of seasons, darkness can lurk just beneath the surface. Story 2. The Uninvited, a chilling holiday tale. It was a crisp December evening, and I had invited a group of friends over for a small holiday get-together. The house was warm and inviting, filled with the scent of pine and the soft glow of Christmas lights. Everyone was in high spirits, enjoying the festive ambience and the company of good friends. As the night progressed, we gathered in the living room, exchanging stories and laughing over glasses of mulled wine. It was then that I noticed someone I didn't recognize. He was a middle-aged man, quietly sitting in a corner of the room, nursing a drink. He was well-dressed, in a suit that seemed a bit too formal for our casual gathering. Curious, I asked my friends if anyone knew him, but everyone shook their heads. We all assumed he was a plus one, brought by someone else in the group. But as I observed him more closely, I felt a growing sense of unease. He was watching the other guests intently, his eyes darting from person to person with an unsettling focus. Trying to be a good host, I approached him with a smile and introduced myself. He offered a brief, almost forced response, "John," but avoided further conversation. His demeanor was aloof, and he seemed disinterested in mingling with the others. As the evening wore on, John remained in his corner, silently observing the festivities. His presence cast a subtle shadow over the party, and a few of my friends commented on the strange vibe he brought into the room. Eventually, he stood up, offered a curt nod to no one in particular, and left without saying goodbye. His departure was as mysterious as his arrival. We all exchanged puzzled glances, but soon the party's warmth and cheer resumed, and John was quickly forgotten. It wasn't until the next morning that the true nature of his visit became horrifyingly clear. I discovered that several valuable items were missing from the house, a couple of expensive watches, jewelry, and even some cash that had been tucked away. It dawned on me then that our uninvited guest had been a thief, using our holiday gathering as an opportunity to subtly rob us under the guise of a party guest. The realization sent a chill down my spine. The man had been in my home, among my friends, posing as someone we could trust. I felt violated and frightened, not only by the loss of valuables, but by the thought of how close we had come to danger without even realizing it. I immediately reported the incident to the police, but with no information on John other than a vague description and no real name, there was little they could do. The thief had vanished as quickly and silently as he had appeared, leaving behind a lingering sense of paranoia and fear. As I sat in my living room, now feeling cold and unsafe, I couldn't help but wonder about the man who had called himself John. Who was he really? How had he known about my party, and why had he chosen us as his targets? The questions swirled in my mind, but the answers seemed as elusive as the mysterious holiday intruder himself. Story 3. The Imposter Santa, a Christmas Horror. It was Christmas Eve, a time when the air is filled with joy and excitement, especially in our large family home in the suburbs. Our family, known for its grand holiday celebrations, had planned something special this year. We had hired a man to dress as Santa Claus to surprise the children on Christmas Day. Little did we know, this decision would turn our festive celebration into a harrowing nightmare. The day started cheerfully, with the aroma of baked goods filling the house and carols playing in the background. Our relatives had gathered, filling the house with laughter and chatter. The children were particularly excited, eagerly awaiting Santa's arrival. As the clock struck 2 p.m., there was a knock at the door. Standing there, in a plush red suit with a jovial smile, was our hired Santa. He seemed perfect for the role, rosy-cheeked, with a twinkle in his eye. The children squealed with delight as he entered, bellowing a hearty ho-ho-ho. Santa began handing out gifts from his sack, engaging with the children in a merry dance of holiday cheer. But as the afternoon progressed, I noticed something off about him. His eyes, initially warm and kind, now seemed cold, his smile a little too forced. I brushed off the feeling as paranoia. As dusk fell, the mood shifted. Santa's demeanor changed. He became irritable, snapping at the children for being too noisy. My uncle, noticing the tension, approached Santa, suggesting maybe it was time for him to leave. That's when it happened. Santa reached into his sack and, to our horror, pulled out a gun. The room froze in shock. He shouted for everyone to stay where they were, his voice no longer jovial but menacing. We realized then that we had let a madman into our home. He ordered us to sit on the ground, waving the gun threateningly. My uncle, trying to reason with him, took a step forward. In a split second, a gunshot echoed through the room, and my uncle fell to the ground, lifeless. Panic ensued. The children were crying, and the adults were in a state of shock. Santa, or rather the imposter, began shouting incoherently, making wild demands. My aunt, a nurse, rushed to attend to my uncle, but it was too late. We were hostages in our own home, a place that was meant to be a haven of joy and celebration. The imposter Santa paced the room, muttering to himself, the gun still in his hand. Every attempt to calm him down seemed to aggravate him more. Hours passed, each minute stretching endlessly as we sat in terror. I managed to inch my way to my phone, hidden under the couch, and dialed 911. Whispering, I informed the operator of the situation. They assured me help was on the way. Outside, the sound of sirens filled the air, and the imposter Santa became more agitated. He began to shout, claiming he had nothing to lose. It was then that my cousin, a former military officer, saw an opportunity. In a swift, calculated move, he tackled the imposter to the ground, knocking the gun away. The police stormed in, apprehending the man and ensuring everyone's safety. The ordeal was over, but the damage was done. Our family was left traumatized, the joy of Christmas tainted by a terrifying encounter with madness. In the aftermath, we learned that the man we had hired had a history of mental illness and criminal behavior. He had slipped through the cracks, his background check never properly conducted by the agency we used. This experience left us with deep scars. Christmas, once a time of happiness and togetherness, now reminded us of the day our lives were threatened, the day we lost a beloved family member. It was a stark reminder that evil can infiltrate even the most sacred of spaces, turning a time of celebration into a fight for survival. Story 4. The Cursed Christmas Lights, a chilling holiday tale. That year, the holiday season in our family home, nestled in a quaint New England town, was transformed from a time of joy and warmth into a period of inexplicable, sinister occurrences. It all began with an old set of Christmas lights I found in our attic. The discovery was made while rummaging through boxes of forgotten holiday decorations. These lights caught my vintage bulbs, large and colorful, each seemingly hand-painted with intricate designs. Believing they would add a classic, nostalgic touch to our Christmas tree, I eagerly brought them downstairs. The first sign that something was amiss occurred the evening I adorned the tree with these lights. There was a subtle shift in the air, a sensation of being watched and fleeting shadows in the periphery of my vision. Initially, I dismissed these feelings as an overactive imagination, a side effect of the eerie quietness of the house. However, the strange incidents began to escalate. It started with the Christmas ornaments inexplicably falling off the tree. Then, there were the unaccounted for sounds at night, distant, soft melodies and the whispers of wind where there should have been none. I rationalized these happenings, attributing them to the quirks of our old home. But as the days passed, the happenings grew more intense and harder to dismiss. Doors would slam shut without any draft, objects moved as if by unseen hands, and at night, the house seemed to come alive with groans and murmurs. My family, too, felt the palpable tension, a silent acknowledgement of the unspoken unease that filled our home. The culmination of these events happened a few nights before Christmas. I was alone in the living room, the only source of light being the flickering flames of the fireplace. The Christmas tree stood silently in the corner, its old lights unplugged and dormant. As the clock struck midnight, a chilling breeze swept through the room, extinguishing the fire and engulfing me in darkness. In that pitch-black room, I felt an unmistakable presence. It was then that the most terrifying event unfolded. The Christmas lights on the tree began to glow. One by one, they flickered to life, casting an otherworldly luminescence in the room. These lights, which were disconnected from any power source, illuminated the figure standing by the tree, a shadowy, spectral presence, tall and ethereal. Rooted to the spot in fear, I watched as the figure remained motionless, its unseen gaze fixed upon me. Then, as abruptly as it appeared, it vanished, and the lights died out, leaving me once again in the enveloping darkness of the room. I spent a sleepless night locked in my room, every creak and whisper of the house sending waves of fear through me. At dawn's first light, I mustered the courage to return to the living room. The tree stood there, innocuous in the morning sun, but the lights were gone, as if they had never been there. In the days that followed, I searched the attic for the box containing the lights, but it, too, had mysteriously disappeared. My family and I were left with a haunting sense of violation, an unshakable feeling that our home had been invaded by something unworldly. We decided to forego the rest of our Christmas decorations, eager to distance ourselves from anything associated with that unsettling night. But the atmosphere in the house had irreversibly changed. Rooms that once felt cozy now seemed to conceal shadows in every corner. Laughter and conversation were replaced with silence and unease. I began to delve into the history of the house, searching for any clue that might explain our experience. I discovered tales of previous inhabitants who had reported similar occurrences, objects moving, unexplained sounds, and the sensation of being watched. It appeared that our family was not the first to experience the house's hidden, ghostly aspect. We eventually moved from that house, but the memory of that Christmas lingers with me. Every holiday season, as families adorn their homes with festive lights, I'm reminded of our encounter with the unknown. Those cursed lights not only illuminated our tree, but also cast light on the thin veil between our world and something far more mysterious. The experience has left me with many questions. Were the lights a conduit for something lurking within the house, or did they possess an otherworldly energy of their own? Whatever the truth, that Christmas has ingrained in me a wariness of the unexplained, a respect for the mysteries that lie just beyond the realm of understanding. Story 5. Christmas Eve was always a special time in our household, a tradition steeped in warmth and joy. I remember the year vividly. I was 13, old enough to appreciate the family gatherings, yet young enough to still feel the magic of the holiday season. Our house, an old but cozy two-story in the suburbs, would be filled with laughter, the sense of delicious cooking, and the sound of Christmas carols. My dad, unfortunately, was down with a severe cold, leaving him bedridden and unable to partake in the festivities. My mom, a culinary enthusiast, was undeterred and took on the task of preparing our Christmas Eve dinner. That year, she had chosen to make our signature roast turkey, a dish that had become a staple of our family gatherings. Eager to help, I became her sous chef, assisting her in the kitchen with various tasks. As the day progressed, our relatives began to arrive. Uncle Joe was the first, accompanied by my cousins Chris and Valerie. They were closest in age to me, and we had always shared a special bond. Chris brought along a new board game he was excited about, and soon enough, I found myself torn away from the kitchen duties, lured by the prospect of a fun evening with my cousins. We set up the board game in the living room, the three of us engrossed in the unfolding strategy and competition. The game was intense, full of twists and turns, and for a moment, I forgot all about my responsibilities in the kitchen. That was until my mom's voice, tinged with a mix of frustration and stress, echoed up the stairs, calling my name. She needed more napkins for the dinner table, stored in the basement. Reluctantly, I excused myself from the game and made my way to the basement. Our house's basement was a sprawling space, more a repository for memories and forgotten items than a functional part of the house. It was dimly lit, with a single bulb casting long shadows across the cluttered room. The air was cool and musty, filled with the scent of old books and fabric. As I searched for the napkins, a sense of unease began to creep over me. The basement, usually a place of childhood adventures and make-believe, felt different that night. There was a heaviness in the air, a tension that I couldn't quite place. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something odd, a shape beneath a tarp in the far corner of the room. Curious, I approached it, thinking perhaps one of my cousins had snuck down here for a prank. The shape was unmistakably human, a person-sized lump lying still under the tarp. My heart began to race, a mix of excitement and nervousness taking hold. I reached out, my hand trembling slightly, and pulled back the tarp. But before I could unveil the mysterious figure, the lights flickered and died, plunging the basement into darkness. I heard the door at the top of the stairs slam shut with a resounding thud. Panic surged through me. Was this part of the prank? Or was something more sinister at play? I fumbled in the dark, trying to find my way to the light switch. But before I could reach it, I felt a sudden, firm grip on my shoulder. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. This was no prank, the hand was too strong, too real. Fear gripped me as I realized I was not alone in the dark. My mind raced with thoughts of who or what could be in the basement with me. The grip tightened, and I felt myself being pulled backward. I struggled, trying to break free, but the strength of the unseen assailant was overwhelming. I started screaming, my voice echoing off the basement walls filled with terror. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the grip loosened. The basement lights flickered back to life, revealing the shocking truth. Standing before me was not my cousin, not a family member playing a joke, but a stranger, a man I had never seen before. His appearance was disheveled, his eyes wild and desperate. For a moment, we stood there, locked in a silent standoff. Then, with a grunt, the man turned and bolted towards the basement's back exit, which led to our backyard. I was left standing there, trembling and in shock. I heard the footsteps of my family rushing down the stairs, their voices filled with concern. My mom was the first to reach me, her face edged with worry. I could barely speak, my words jumbled and incoherent as I tried to explain what had happened. My uncles, upon hearing my account, immediately sprang into action. They dashed outside, scouring the backyard and the surrounding area for any sign of the intruder. But it was as if he had vanished into thin air. There were no tracks in the snow, no trace of his escape. The police arrived shortly after, their questions and flashlights piercing the cold night. They suggested the man might have been a vagrant seeking shelter from the cold, a theory that did little to ease my shaken nerves. The rest of the night was a blur of police reports and concerned relatives. The festive atmosphere had been irreparably shattered. Dinner was forgotten, the turkey left untouched as we all grappled with the reality of the intrusion. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake off the feeling of vulnerability, the sense that our home, our sanctuary, had been violated. The memory of the man's grip on my shoulder, the look in his eyes, haunted my dreams. We later learned that there had been a series of break-ins in our neighborhood, likely the work of the same man. But none of that mattered to me. That Christmas Eve, the safety and innocence I had always associated with the holiday were lost. It was a harsh reminder that danger can lurk in the most unexpected places, even on a night as holy and peaceful as Christmas Eve. The incident left a permanent mark on our family. We became more vigilant, more aware of our surroundings. The doors were always locked, the windows checked and rechecked. But the sense of security that had once enveloped our home was gone, replaced by a lingering sense of fear and uncertainty. As I grew older, the memory of that Christmas Eve remained with me. It was a reminder that the world is full of unexpected dangers, that not all is calm and bright on a silent night. It was a lesson learned in the most terrifying way, that sometimes the ghosts of Christmas aren't just spirits of the past, but very real, very present dangers. Story 6. The Unwelcome Visitor on Christmas. It was Christmas Eve of 2020, a Thursday, and I had traveled to Maine to spend the holidays with my family. This year, it was just going to be a small gathering at my grandparents' old house, nestled deep in the woods. The plan was for me to stay from Thursday to Sunday. I had spent Christmas Eve with my girlfriend at her family's house, but she couldn't join me for the next day. Our family is quite spread out, so our gatherings are usually intimate. This year, it was my grandparents, my parents, my younger sister, and me. The house, an old, spacious colonial, could comfortably accommodate all of us. As per tradition, after a hearty Christmas dinner, we all settled in the living room to watch It's a Wonderful Life, one of my grandpa's favorites. Post-movie, we enjoyed some homemade apple pie and then played a few rounds of Scrabble. Around 10:30 p.m., everyone started heading to bed. My sister and I decided to bunk in the attic, which had been converted into a cozy guest room. I love the attic room for its quaint charm and the skylight that offered a view of the starry sky. As I lay in bed, drifting to sleep, I started dreaming about Christmas, but in a strange, unsettling way. In my dream, we were all at my grandparents' house, but there were extra guests, like my distant cousin Rob and Aunt Linda. We were unwrapping gifts when suddenly everyone went silent, turned to me, and Cousin Rob said gravely, "You need to wake up now." I snapped awake, heart pounding. The room was pitch dark except for the faint moonlight seeping through the skylight. A feeling of dread washed over me. Then, from downstairs, I heard a faint creak as if someone was walking cautiously. Sitting up, I strained my ears. The house was silent, save for the occasional groan of the old wooden structure. Then, another creak, closer this time, as if someone was on the stairs leading to the attic. I whispered, "Is anyone there?" No response. The footsteps continued, slow and deliberate. I nudged my sister awake and whispered what I heard. We both sat in silence, listening. Then, suddenly, the footsteps stopped. We heard the soft sound of the attic door opening. My heart raced as we saw a shadowy figure outlined against the faint light from the hallway. "Who's there?" I called out louder, but the figure didn't respond. Instead, it retreated, the sound of footsteps fading away. We heard the back door open and then close. Yelling for help, I woke up the entire house. My grandpa, Dad, and I quickly put on our coats and went outside. The snow was freshly fallen, and we saw a set of footprints leading away from the house towards the woods. We were hesitant to follow into the dark, dense forest, so we called the police. While waiting, we all checked the house. Nothing seemed stolen or out of place, which was odd given the intruder's apparent intent. The police arrived and followed the footprints as far as they could, but they eventually lost the trail in the woods. They told us there were no other break-in reports that night. The next day, the local news reported nothing unusual, so it seemed like our house was the only one targeted. It could have been someone looking for an easy steal on Christmas Eve, but the way they vanished into the woods left us all unsettled. Sleeping in that attic room the next night was nearly impossible. The image of that shadowy figure at the door replayed in my mind over and over. It was a Christmas holiday that none of us would ever forget, for all the wrong reasons. And those, my dear listeners, were the bone-chilling tales that haunt this festive season. Each story, a reminder that not all is merry and bright during the holidays. But now, I turn to you. What do you think? Have you ever experienced anything so unnerving during the holidays? Can you imagine the terror of finding an unwelcome guest in your home, or the shock of a festive celebration turning into a nightmare? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. And if these stories have sent shivers down your spine, make sure to hit that like button, to subscribe and ring the bell for notifications. You wouldn't want to miss out on any of our future tales of terror, would you? Thank you for joining us tonight at Teddy's Nightmares. Remember, the next time you're cozied up, celebrating the festive season, keep an eye out. You never know what might be lurking just outside your window, or even worse, inside your home. Until next time, stay safe and keep the lights on. Goodbye, and see you in the next video.